Dave, thank you very much for coming in to see us.
No problem. My pleasure.
Someone we've been itching to get in the chair for ages,
Right.
and obviously a big announcement as well for us is that you're now an official team member for Gardner Tackle, with the lovely T-shirt on there that we made you change before we started the video. So look, we're really pleased to have you on board. Your knowledge and experience is something that's going to help Gardner along the road.
Yep,
so
hopefully.
look forward to working with you. And secondly, congratulations, you've become a granddad.
I know.
You've got a grandson
My
now.
first grandchild came yesterday,
Bless.
and I get to see him after this.
Good.
So I'm going straight.
Well, we
from here.
won't keep you too long here.
No,
This
no
is just
problem.
a quick introduction, because we've got you in today to talk about sort of just your experience and your life on fishing big pits. So we just a little introduction and going down the road. Obviously, now you're a team member, we'll be doing some in-depth videos with you, rigs, approaches, things like that.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
it was just a little bit. We wanted to sit you in front of the camera today and just talk a little bit about Dave Lane and where it all began for you fishing.
Yeah.
So where did it all start for you?
My dad, who's long gone now, bless him, first took me fishing, just sort of dad and lad time, you know what I mean? For perch and bits and pieces and what have you. And I actually caught my first ever carp with my dad, floating crust, and it was 2.5 pound of wildy in the night, and it was just unbelievable. It was one of those moments, you know, where you've been catching little fish like that, and then it was this big
Explosion.
Yeah, 2.5 pound, and it just changed everything for me. It was just, I just thought, this is what I want to do.
That's where the bug bit.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a long while before I got into this, you know, like sort of, what do you call it? It's more like carp
The carp in
fishing.
what we see today, really, yeah.
That was quite a way down the line, but I think I'm glad I did it the way I did it. I think that's the right way for people that are thinking of getting into fishing or getting their kids into fishing. Personally, I think the worst thing you can do is if you're a carp angler, take your son carp fishing, get him a carp kit and sit him next to a carp pond.
Just add water scenario.
I don't think that's the way. I don't think you learn enough or appreciate enough. You know, and I did perch fishing, tench fishing, anything, just fishing. Didn't care what you caught, and then progressed to carp fishing, and then got the carp gear, you know, sort of carp gear, mismatched rods, a 9-foot one of these. I had one of those kits that you get from Woolworths, where it can make 7 different rods, but not at once. It can only got 2 butts. But I managed to make 3 rods out of it. I sellotaped a reel to like the middle section, and it had a solid fiberglass tip and a hollow fiberglass middle and a wooden handle and all sorts, anything basically. It was just fishing. But I think you learn a lot more like that. You learn about what's going on under the water through float fishing and ground baiting and stuff. And I think it puts you in good stead as a carp angler to come up through the ranks.
Doing your apprenticeship.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
and starting carp fishing with, you know, bread flake and sausage meat and free line and bread bobbins, and you know, I know that's all terribly old school and that, but I do think they were very exciting times, and you remember all of that
100%,
rather than just waiting for something to go beep, which is what we do now.
So where was you fishing? Where was you? You was born up of Crawley way?
I was born just outside Crawley, moved to Crawley. My parents did when I was about 6 months, and I was brought up in pubs and that. It's been the family trade, has been the pub trade, which might explain a lot. And fished small pits round and about, and then fished a place in Crawley, a park called Tilgate. That's when I first saw a boilie, a hair rig, and just laughed at it. Just thought, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. The bait's not on the hook, you know. So I started there and then moved up. I did some early quite big pit fishing down at Chichester. There's a lake there called Ivy, and I think it's around 75 acres, something like that. And they had a little island out in the middle, and next door was a trout lake, and they had boats on the trout lake for a tenner a day or $5 a day or whatever it was back then. And I managed to talk the bloke into renting me a boat and letting me drag it across the causeway, rowing out to this little island. And I used to fish off this little island out in the middle of Ivy, and I caught my personal best carp of the time there, and it was a common of £15.12, and I was just so chuffed with it. I look at the photos now, and it still looks like a big fish. In respect of what it was at the time.
Was a very big fish.
And I was well chuffed with that. But I realised really early on that stuff I'd done on Ivy was so more exciting than fishing the smaller lakes, and I think that's where it started for me. The big pit sort of, it is my passion, if you like, in big waters. I love fishing big waters. I'm not intimidated by them at all. It's, to be honest, I think the fish are easier to catch in big waters than they are in small waters.
It's weird because, like I say, sometimes you can be fishing small waters, have fish showing over you all night, not a touch.
Yeah.
But generally, when you're fishing a big water, you see one top over the top of where you're fishing. You do often get a run, don't you? And
yeah, I mean, all fishing, carp fishing, is about location. You can't catch what isn't there to be caught, basically. But with big pits, if I think back to some of the big pits I've fished at low stock, say 20 fish in 120 acres, like Raisbury was, 20 odd fish. If you saw a fish jump in an area, and the area might be 25 acres, in a section, you think, oh, they're here, and you'd be confident of a bite. Whereas on a small pit, maybe a 3-acre pit, everything's more condensed. You're looking for a spot and a spot within a spot to get that bite. Whereas in a big pit, the fish have got the option of going. Yeah, if they don't like what you're doing, they can go somewhere else. In a small pit, they're just going to matey's plot next door, who's also having a go, and matey's next door. Yeah. So they become harder to catch. They're more clued up in small pits. Whereas in a big pit, they're hard to catch because they're harder to find. So if you're good at location, you don't mind walking, which I don't mind, getting round and keep moving and what have you. I find that those big pit fish, they're probably easier to get a take from a big pit fish once you've found them. Small pits, you've got to work on so much, your rigs, your presentation, everything about it. Yeah. Whereas on a big pit, what you need from your tackle is you need it to be super reliable. That's the main thing. Everything's, it's got, because they're quite snaggy, and some of the pits I've fished, there's trees falling in over years, and then other trees gone on top of them, and they become very hard to fish because of that, because of the nature of the place and the size of the place, and you need very reliable tackle. But actually getting the pickup, I think, can be a lot easier than on the smaller pits.
Do you often find in big lakes as well, if you see one fish, there's often more there as well in the big pits? Yeah,
they're a shoal creature on them big pits, and they've all gone to a certain area for the same reasons, whether that's weather conditions or whatever, or harvesting. Those big pits, you'll get, like the West Bay will be ready for them to feed at a certain time. I remember fishing a place called Mary's Pit up in Northampton, and there was one bay, a central bay. There was like two big points, and it formed three bays basically, and they loved both them bays, and I never saw a single carp in that central bay on the year that I fished it until September, I believe it was. And then one day I clocked it, and they just went in there and they fed like mad, and I caught the three biggest fish in the lake in 24 hours. Crazy. In that bay, because it was ripe for harvesting. They went in there to feed. And that's, you notice that a lot with the big pits. They go to places to feed. They're not going there because Joe up the road spooked them and they're coming down your way and they're looking for somewhere to hide.
It's just their natural mindset that they go in.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's natural. They think, right, everything's ripe for going up the top bay or in the back channel or whatever. So they're going there with the purpose of feeding. So if you can find them, especially if you can get there just before them, you know where they're going, that I think is why they're easier to catch, because they're there for that purpose of feeding.
Yeah. So let's go through some of the big pits that you've fished. We've got about 4 pictures as well there with the dog, and this is Raisbury.
That's Raisbury 2, that is. I absolutely loved that pit. That was a bit like going back in time for me.
Yeah.
Because obviously I fished Raisbury 1 a long time ago when there was hardly anyone on there. You're making your own swims, you're cutting down trees, you're having bonfires. All of that came back to me when I fished Raisbury 2. It was exactly the same. A lot of the swims that are on there now, I made about 4 years ago now, something like that. I used to have all my fishing gear in the boat, and my dog, obviously. And then I'd have a sack in there as well, which had, loppers and cutters and hand saws. And on the island, stashed, I had a chainsaw, 2 strimmers, like big proper industrial like strimmers.
Steel ones or something.
I had all the kit. And on all the islands, I had stuff stashed, various stuff, spare batteries for the boat, petrol for the strimmers and the chainsaws and oil and everything you could need really for that sort of fishing was all there. And I love all that adventure, you know, it's like a boy's own thing. Yeah, you're out there.
Pirate and going out.
Yeah, it's just, you pull up there's nobody else there, you load your boat and you set off and it's the wilderness and you know it's all yours. Or a couple of mates maybe. I had a couple of guys I got on really well with that fished there. And we just did what we wanted. You know, we went out there and said, we need a swim there so that we can fish out that way, and we'd make a swim and then a big bonfire and burn everything we'd chop down and put spuds in the ashes and proper fishing.
It's miles apart from what you get now on a club or a syndicate, really,
yeah,
isn't it?
It is. And it's, you know, it's not what I do all the time because there aren't that many places like that anymore. No. You know, people are like, now that lake's busy. People are more willing to invest quite a lot of time and effort into those sort of waters, whereas back a little bit, people weren't. They wanted stuff easy, which suited me because I'd take the hard stuff. But now, no, it all seems a lot more accessible, which is fair enough. People, you know, they want to do it as well. I just don't want them to do it near me.
Well, you've set a trend, you know.
Yeah.
And when you see photos like that, you know, it just appeals to you, doesn't it?
I mean, that's a small. That's not even a quarter.
How many acres Raspberry on there?
I think that's 110, something like that, I think.
But it's broken up, isn't it?
It's very broken up. There's two completely different lakes, if you like, that are interconnected, obviously. There's the West Lake and the Railway Lake. And then there's the dredger bit at the back, the rustic barge, which is a sort of a separate...
It's like a famous landmark in fishing, isn't it, as well?
And then there's back channels and there's interconnected bits. You can never see much of the lake from anywhere. And that's also something I really like about big pits, is that sense that when you go around the corner, there might be something else. You know, it's not like sitting at a lake where you can see all the lake and nothing's showing. So you're sitting there, you're looking at that lot and nothing's showing. And you think, right, I'll just boat through that gap, and then you've got another lake. And you think, you know, if anything happens in here, there's only me looking, and then they're not there. They might be in the back channel, half a mile that way.
So it keeps you on your toes.
It keeps you going because you've always got that anticipation that the next bend you go round, you
can find it.
It's there. And if you do, there's nobody. You know, you haven't got a bucket to swim and rush to it. You're there. You've found all your gear's in the boat, and it's just beautiful fishing.
So what other lakes? Let's go for another loop. We've got some other pictures of That's great, isn't it?
She helps, look. She is absolutely loves boats. I mean, I've had 3 carp dogs. I had Fat Sam, who I had she died when she was nearly 20. I think she was 18 plus.
And a good
fished,
life.
Oh yeah, fished everywhere with me. And then I had Padua, who was the best dog ever. Unfortunately, he died when he was about 7.5 of cancer. And then I got Madalena, and all of them loved boats. Absolutely loved boats, yeah. And that's a normal thing, figurehead position. She's up there.
Looking for the fish.
Yeah. So she tells me.
So what other big pits have we fished as well? I mean, this is...
That's Sonning.
So just a Sonning there.
Yeah,
so,
with Sonning's 240 acres, which is a fair size for a UK pit. I fished that completely differently to most of the big pits I've ever fished. There was a lot of out of bounds at Sonning, and I'd done something I've never really done on a big pit. I was quite static, and I made the fish come to me.
Created a feeding
with an obscene amount of bait. There was a lot of big bream in there. By big, I mean between 10 and 15 pound. Lots, hundreds of them, and they'd eat a lot of bait. And there was a fair few carp. You were only after about 8 to 10 fish, the bigger ones, but there was quite a lot of ex-river fish in there. So you had this situation where you could get your bait eaten and create spots. So I found good spots and just fed them and created a situation where, I mean, in that picture it looks lovely, the wind's coming in and it's great, but that would have been a northerly. So all the big winds, the south and the southwest winds, were going over my head 240 acres away, but I was still getting the bites. Because they were coming,
so they
were coming every night.
Yeah.
Everything was nocturnal, and I didn't catch the big in the eye that year from that spot. But then I repeated the process on the other side, the next year and did exactly the same, and that's how I caught the biggest fish in there, just on a spot that was very heavily baited, regularly baited.
How did you keep away from the bream, out of curiosity?
Just caught them.
You just went through the bream,
yeah,
just
I had
through
in
them.
the front, I don't know, you can't, I don't think I constructed it there, but just down to the right of the rods in the end, I got a load of floating Canadian weed that had come in, and I made a ramp, like a wet ramp.
Yeah.
So when I got the bream in the night, I'd slide them up the wet ramp, put my finger down, flick the hook out, put 2 fingers under its gills and flip it over, and it'd slide back down the chute and go in the lake. So I didn't have to touch it. And
Fun slide for bream.
Oh yeah, they loved it. They were going wee as they went in. You can hear them, they did.
I'll go back out and spot all the baits and pick up another one.
But I'd probably get a minimum of 6 of them a night, maybe 10 of them a night. But in the middle of them, on the same rods, I'd get a carp or 2 carp. So you had to just keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going.
Did try bigger baits and longer hair
and
anything like that? You tried everything.
Yeah. And the most amazing thing is they absolutely love tiger nuts, the bream. They loved them. I tried them to avoid the bream.
Yeah.
You could put on a single tiger, 240 acre lake, just chuck it out there and a bream would pick it up. They just
Still
mad
going
for
for
them.
the tigers, crazy.
Absolutely mad for them.
Yeah, most people use them to avoid them, sort of thing.
Yeah,
you know,
but I mean, I was using 18mm boilies on there and just getting bream after bream. But like I say, I was getting carp as well. So,
crikey. Okay, so I mean, preparation-wise, when you're fishing these big lakes, where you say there, you created a feeding area. Is that something you do on every water?
It's completely the polar opposite of how I normally fish.
Right.
I like to do it. And if I get on a big pit, I'll see an area and think, oh, yeah. And I fall in love with certain looking swims, the aesthetics of it. I think, oh, that's a lovely little swim.
I think we're all guilty of that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's all overgrown. I've even made little wicker fences and little stuff in places where people don't normally go. Made myself a little home in there and started baiting it. I hardly ever see it through because I am the most impatient angler you've ever met. I am so impatient. I'll bait it and bait it and bait it. I'll do 24 hours in there. I won't catch anything, and then I'll forget all about it and go and do it somewhere else. I've started pre-baiting so many swims. It's unbelievable. But I only see it through if I get a result quite quickly and it's obvious that it is working. Because I want to fish that other little sexy swim up the other end as well, and I want to make a swim over there. So that's unusual for me to do that style of fishing.
So you often, when you're fishing your chosen lake, you're fishing one spot, are you often baiting other areas as well, maybe 2 or 3 swims that you've always sort of know you're trickling a bit of bait into?
Very often, very often. I'll probably all the time. Often I have what I call a bait dump. Yeah. So when I go, I'll take a gamble on the same spot, somewhere that I'm not in a mad rush to fish, and what I've got left I'll put in there rather than take it home, and I'll do that over. I fished, was it last year? I had a little bait. It was only a little bait dump under a bush in an area that nobody, a busy lake, but I've never seen anyone fish this spot. And I baited that for 6-7 weeks when I got there and when I went home. So they had quite a lot of regular baitings on that spot, and I never fished it. Just never got round to it.
Well, it was always a backup cast.
Yeah. I just thought one day when I don't know where to go, I'll have a go in there, but I just never did.
And is it normally you just more of a boilie angler out of curiosity than particle, or do you have a real mix of the
lot? I think a good way of bait, in a way I like to bait, is to have food of all sizes. So I'll have a mixed particle from hemp up to corn and tigers, chopped tigers, and my boilies, I'm chop them and mince them, so the boilies start from dust to pieces to quarters to halves to wholes. And I don't mix the lot together because the particle tends to turn the boilies. I like to keep them separate, but they'll all go in together. So I'll end up with a swim that I think the carp can stay busy in, and other stuff comes in. I think also a busy swim's a good swim. If you've got roach and rudd and maybe not so much bream, but you know what I mean. You got fish.
It's creating a smell going around.
Yeah, well, they're in there and they're feeding, and then some small carp come in and feed. And those bigger fish in any lake are never. They're not going to ignore that. If that's happening all the time, if you've got a spot that's cooking and you've always got bait going in, and there's always something feeding, then big carp aren't going to swim past that.
They're always going to return.
They're going to know that something's going on, and once they move in, they're going to want it. And you keep it going in, and that's the way I like to prepare a spot with, or just generally fish, is with bits of all sizes. I mean, I've done some underwater. I say I did. I was fishing and I had a guy with a proper big camera set on a big pole underwater, and it blew my mind a little bit. I was only margin fishing, but I couldn't see everything that was going on. And I'd put chopped like crush boilies and bits and pieces down there. There were little roach picking up quarter boilies. They could hardly get them off the deck, but taking them away, and then coming back, and it was permanently being raped. This spot, so. From the activity I'd had on the rods, which wasn't a lot, I did catch one while we were doing it, I'd have assumed that I'd got a better bait down there. But watching through, we had a monitor on the bank, I just thought, I need to top that up again. There was just bits going off all the time.
Out of curiosity, since when you first put that better bait down there, how long till you felt you needed to top that back up again?
We were only there for the day.
Within a day?
Yeah.
And how much did you put out of?
I was fishing for a bite at a time, so a couple of big, if you put your hands together as much as you could get in a big...
couple of cereal bowls full.
But on a margin spot, enough, but in a couple of hours, it was noticeably less. Yeah, noticeably less.
Wow. Crazy. So, obviously, other big pits that you've fished as well. Like I say, you've got on either you fished Burfield to name but a few, and for you, it's just all about the big pit fishing. It's just
definitely.
I mean, and that's
Sprogborough. That's a proper big pit.
And acres on this one?
200.
Yeah.
2 or 220, one or the other. I fished 2 pits in close proximity to each other. I thought I'd have a big pit and an easier, smaller one. One was 220 and one was 200. Yeah. So the one that was the other one, not this one, I don't think had any carp in it either, which makes it a little bit tricky. But I thought if they are in there, I used to go there every morning on my way to here, so once a week at first light, and every evening on my way home. Once a week and evening on the way home, and walk the whole pit, and I never saw a single carp jump in there. But this one, Sprogborough, had quite a good head of carp in there, and they acted like proper carp. They'd go, you can see here that white water, that coloured water, is backwash from the bank I'm standing on. Yeah. A new wind got up and it was undercutting the clay on the bank and washing it back out. And I had 7 fish, I think, that session, fishing on the tip of those reeds.
I was going to say, right on the edge of the murky water, basically, as they're coming
just
into
on that crease line. I think 7, maybe 8 fish. They'd just gone in there, new conditions. But I love that sort of thing. It wasn't an interesting pit if you looked at it like it was a round pit. It was a great big round pit, but it was covered in gravel bars, literally hundreds of gravel bars.
Proper gravel bars.
Oh yeah, it could go from 2 foot to 18 foot, back up to 2 foot. It's mad. If you look at it on Google Earth, it's crazy. So it was really exciting, and you could use a boat as well. So that's a bit of proper
Do you
fishing.
usually prefer it when you're fishing a big lake? Is it a must, really, ideally, to be able to use a boat for you? I mean, obviously, we know it all else, and we'd all rather use one than not.
Yes, it makes it a lot easier. It depends. Fish can get very, very paranoid of boats. They get very scared of boats. The noise that an engine makes underwater is unbelievable. If you put a GoPro underwater on a stick and have the engine and then listen.
Even bait boats, I've heard them from a GoPro on a bait boat alone.
I did some filming yesterday off of a bridge, and I had a roach pole, great big long roach pole, my GoPro on the end, and I lowered it down. The fish were under the bridge, there's some mesh there to stop people spinning off the bridge, and the fish were underneath. So I lowered this GoPro down and stuck it underneath the cages, if you like, and unbelievable. 40 pounders just coming past the camera, but they didn't handle it for long. And I thought, what can they be possibly worried about? There's a bridge that's always got people on. There's stanchions of the bridge. Excuse me. And there's metal caging in the water. What? It's just a little stem and a little tiny GoPro. Couldn't figure it out. Anyway, later that evening, I was looking at the footage on my phone. The noise was unbelievable. Just me touching the roach pole. If I moved my fingers,
really?
Yeah, it was being transmitted down the pole. And the noise, like if a plane went over, you could hear it underwater. I assume more than normal because the noise was going down the pole.
Exacerbated underwater, yeah.
And, sound is like that underwater anyway. They reckon it travels 7 times faster than it does in the air because of the particles being closer together. But it also amplifies it. And, if the pole just touched the cage a little bit, the camera really picked up the noise. Now, whether the fish affects them or not, something affected them. And I can only assume it was that. And then they all came back after when I took the camera out, But I thought, why they can't be scared of it? It's nothing. It's not fishing. I mean, carp are scared of the sound of a lead going in, but if you throw a brick in, they're not particularly scared of it.
No,
it's fishing they're scared of. They've been taught to be scared of us fishing for them. But a camera on a pole, but I think that's what it was. It was the noise the pole was transmitting underwater.
So there's a big lesson for anyone, like, when you are fishing close margins and, you've got gravelly in your swims or something, it just shows you how much that noise can go through. And,
if you're putting a long bank stick, so you want your bank sticks out in the water and the fish are fairly close in and you're going, putting it through the gravel to set it in there, that must be deafening for them. So easy for them to hear.
Another reason, this would be, I see what your view is on this. Obviously, I love using ATTs for the simple reason that the head itself doesn't make any noise. Do you think, from what you said there, and I've always been under the impression that, we've all been to that lake where the bloke loves to set up his indicators and let everyone know he's doing it. Does that noise must travel through? We've
had this discussion on the bank quite a lot, and it was a thing that I haven't done it. I haven't got around to doing it, but I would love to think of a way of setting that up and seeing and going, maybe putting the rig in the far margins, going 60, 70 yards away and recording and seeing if there's anything. I mean, you get 2 baked bean cans and a bit of string like when you were a kid, and that's opposite the other side of the street, out the bedroom windows, you can chat through it. And I've often wondered, I thought, does that beep travel down that line?
It's always been something I've always sat and thought about. And you know what, one day we'll do that. I'm going to make that as one of the things before I die, just to see. But like I said, that's why I love the ATTs, obviously, because they've got the speaker on the head, so you've got the remote system, by your ear on vibrate or low or whatever, So it's an interesting one, and like I say, it's always...
I've thought about it a lot, but I haven't gone as far as to try and to figure out how to see if it does happen or not. It'd be with a GoPro and a line or whatever. But I'd like to do it. Yeah.
Oh, well, something to maybe do soon. And this is the white fluff we were talking about, because obviously, it's just quickly, if anyone watches, I'm using braid at the moment, so this is a nightmare scenario for braid.
Yeah, it's the willow floss. I've been a braid user almost exclusively for 15 years now, and usually May is the worst month. But as everybody knows, this May there was no sun, was there? There was nothing but rain and wind, and there wasn't any willow floss, and it's now. It's right now.
We're very late, isn't it?
And as a braid user, it is a nightmare. Not only do the pieces of floss stick to the braid and keep it on the surface, but it sort of deposits an oily film on the surface, which also it turns any braid into a floating braid. And you can wake up in the morning and you can see a massive great bow of your line.
It happened to me Sunday night, and we get a lot of phone calls. Oh, your braid's floating. You just say, listen, what time of the year is it? End of May, around that time. Exactly what you said. It's the fluff, it's the oil that comes off of that. It will make any line float at the top. And your braid's rubbish. Not. This is. I just had to bring it into
it's unavoidable at this time of year, and I've gone on this particular lake, which gets it really bad. And I was fishing at quite a long range on here, not in that particular photo.
What lake is this one? Sorry, by the way.
That is a small bay off of Rosebery 2.
Right. Okay.
But out in the open, in the big bit, I'd be fishing quite a long way out with the boat, and I'd put my rig down, and then I'd get back to the bank, set everything up, slack them right off, and I'd go back out with a long, like a landing net pole with the spreader block, and I'd push my line down between any bits of weed or whatever and clear off any white stuff, and then I'd put a tiny little back lead, only a light one, clip it on the line, lower that down, then come back 20 yards, do the same again. So you'd think in your head, and then have a captive back lead off the tip, and I'm fishing in fairly deep water. So you think in your head, good angling, you've done everything. There's no way that line's coming up. And you wake up in the morning, and you look out there, and you can see a couple of rod length sections of line. It's got back leads on it. It's got 4 back leads, only little light ones. So if you get a fish, you go like that, and they ping off or what have you. Sometimes I make them with just a little loop tucked into silicone, so that they come off very easily. Yeah. And you just think that line is literally doing that.
Like a roller coaster.
Yeah. That's crazy. And so it is unavoidable. You just have to put up with it or use fluorocarbon or something. Yeah.
I mean, like I was saying to you earlier, every year I say to myself, since I've been using braid last 2 or 3 years, right, that's it. It's come off the braid in the earlier parts of the year. And I never So my fault. But I do go to fluorocarbon.
And it's the same with
sinking
sinking braid, floating braid, whatever. It all becomes a floating braid.
Yeah, yeah. So another pit here. That's
Black Swan down at Dinton Pastures. Yeah. I joined that. I think it was the second year of a syndicate on there. White Swan next door is very, very well known. I mean, Black Swan is now, but White Swan was very well known, and this great big lake was next door, and there was no fishing on there. It's a boating lake, and then they opened a syndicate on there, and I got on there in the second year, and you can't say it was wild because it's in a country park, so you've got dog walkers and you've got groups of mums with buggies doing a keep fit thing. They go round.
And whereabouts is that again?
You've got all sorts going on there. I mean, I've just been covering this sort of section. I do a video, it's a YouTube channel, but it's a pay-as-you-go thing. Yeah. It's called The Inner Circle. It's hosted through a company called Patreon.
Yep.
And I'm doing, you said earlier you watched the things I did in the first lockdown when I did the first book, all about the early days and that. Well, I've carried that on, and I've done the next 2 books in the same sort of style, if you like, and I do it on this channel, and we're at this now. And going back through the photos of Black Swan and how it was, I've got a photo there, which I put up the other week, of me, 3 St Trinian's girls and a 6-foot white rabbit. They just walked into my swim. Yeah, they just walked into, excuse me, mister, can we have a photo? And I'm like, really? Oh, the man over there says you write for magazines. And it was like a college rag week charity thing, and they had a banner for the illness they were raising money for. So obviously, I thought I'd have it anyway. That's gold, isn't it?
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah,
but it didn't. And so you couldn't say it's the wilderness because stuff like that happened all the time, and there's kids in canoes or whatever. But it was new, and there was mystery, and some of the fishing there.
How many acres was this one?
I think it was about 90, I believe. Yeah, about 90.
Wow.
But again, split into 2 sides, a west side and an east side. Big islands down the middle, big bay on its own, sort of separate at one end. Some of the fishing there were just stunning.
Yeah, and we got a few of our lads actually fished in.
I was catching them at 30. We were after the originals, which we didn't catch. I think we probably missed. Well, actually, that's a lie. My mate F had the big common at £50, which was an old one. These growing fish that Simon's the guy that runs Dinton, and he does fish breeding, and some of his fish were I'd one at 36, which was like 4 foot long linear. It's now just over £50. 3 or 4 of the fish that I caught are mid-high 30s are now £50.
Is that, just breaking away from that quickly, obviously since they opened fishing up, is it food that we've applied that, in your opinion, has got them that big? Was it a rich water?
They're a good strain of fish. Yeah. He knows what he's doing with his fish. They went in there they're young fish. They're growing fish, and it's a very rich lake, incredibly rich lake. Plus, they've got the supplement of the bait when they want it. Yeah. So it's a perfect storm, really. It's ideal for them.
Okay, I think so. Just quickly as well. So we're going to go to preparation now, and things like, because obviously we come at the end of it, and we just want to know, for anyone watching this, they've got a new pit, big pit.
Yeah.
Let's go a little bit let's just hear your approach if you was fishing a new water. Yeah. A little bit about your preparation, how you approach it, and your watercraft towards catching fish. So obviously, seeing this, you go very camouflaged.
There's quite a lot. It depends where you're fishing. Yeah. It depends what sort of ticket you have, whether it's a coverall or a stay under coverall. This was the latter. Yes, there's a lot of preparation of stuff, and a lot of that takes place at home. Mm-hmm. I wasn't specifically allowed in certain areas on this lake I'm preparing for here, hence all the camo stuff. I like to have camo stuff anyway, though, on those sort of pits, because you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. Not for the fishing, not for anything, just for your own, when you look at your own swim. You don't want... I just like
candy.
Blend in a little bit. That's Padua I was talking about. Yeah. But yes, there's a lot of preparation at home, but most of the preparation before I start fishing will be done, to start with, on Google Earth. I'll look at the lake and try. There's a a history button on Google Earth, so you can go back years at a time, right back to when it was a field. So I see if I can get a photo that might show the bars and what have you.
Old stream beds.
Yeah, stuff like that, you know. I'll also speak to anybody I know that knows anything about the pit, you know, friends from way back. Learn as much as I can about the history of the place, what's in there. I'm a bit weird. I'm quite weird, actually. I'm going away from that.
Welcome to the team.
I don't like to, I don't like to see all the photos of the fish in a lake when I start fishing it, or before I start fishing it. I like to know there's a big one in there. I don't mind seeing a picture of the big one to make sure it's not some hideous, grotesque thing. For example, on a lake that wasn't a big pit, but just to give you an idea of what I mean, when I fished Monks, my first night on there, the bailiff came walking along to my swim, and he had a big, heavy carrier bag. He said, "Stick kettle on, got something for you here." And I was like, "This is interesting," so I put the kettle on. And he pulled out 2 big, hefty, like "This Is Your Life" red photo albums. I said, "Right, these are the fish." I said, "I am not being funny, mate, and please don't take this the wrong way, but you might as well put them back in your bag." I said, "I don't want to see someone else holding all them fish. I don't want to know everything that's in here. I want a little bit of mystery." And that's, I think, why I like the big pits so much, because there's always
the unknown,
always unknown, always mystery. There's always, you know, when you're doing your research, which is where we were going there, there's always the tales. It's always a common, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it.
Oh, I see one down here. I'm telling you, mate, it dwarfed everything in here.
And what you've just said is I always, like I was saying to Gav the other day at the lake, people always use that. The big one was there and this one dwarfed it. It's always dwarfed it, isn't it? But I've, through fishing these big pits all around the country, some of the stuff we've heard, you know, like a good old boy will tell you, you know, "Oh, it's got eyes like tractor wheels," that, or you know, "Tipped old Ted out the punt, it did," and you know, his head was sticking out one side of the boat and his tail out the other. That's a classic. You hear that everywhere, and it's always a monster common. It's never a mirror. It's always this massive, great common that's never been caught. And obviously you have to filter that out from your research. But yeah, I do a lot of research before I fish somewhere. So I don't want to see the photos. I just want to know that there's one big one in there, and I want everything else to be a mystery. You know, I'm there and I catch an old looking 32 pounder that's as old as the eels, and it's just this beautiful old dark mirror. I'm over the moon with that. I don't care that it's 32 or 28 or 48 or whatever. I know there's one big one in there. I know I'm working towards something. Everything else is a bonus.
Yeah. So, okay, you've approached the big pit, like you say, apart from camo and everything up, you've got, you know, again, look on multi-maps or Google Earth as it is now, sorry, you know, get to know the features, speak to other anglers, get an idea of, you know, it's always handy to hear what's going on. Maybe ignore some of the stories that you do here.
Knowledge, you know, is power, but sometimes you want knowledge to ignore. You know, you get knowledge of what's been done, and you think, well, that's been done.
Yeah. So 100%. You know, and how many times you've seen it on a lake, a new angler comes on.
Oh, yeah, and all the time. Just does something completely different.
Fishes different spots to the norm. So, and then after you've got those things, sort of, you know a little bit about the lake, you know the build up in your head. Is it then just the case for you to just walk and really try and get an idea of where those fish are?
Again, it depends on the type of pit. I've fished some very wild pits where, yes, you walk, but when you do find areas that the fish are going, they're not always accessible. And those sort of lakes,
like a scenario, actually.
Well, yeah, that's prime example. That's at the top of a bay on a lake I fished, and the fish were using this area. There's a bar. There's a bit of an island in the distance, and there's a bar runs all the way down and bisects this bay. And I wanted to get on the end of the bar down this end, but that's what I was faced with. And you couldn't, you know, you could just about boat into it. So first thing I did was get the toolkit out. You know, on this particular lake, I had all stuff, stashed chainsaws and strimmers and that, like I said. So I went in there and I created it, and I think there's a picture of it the next day. That's it, the next day.
You can come around and do my garden, actually, I think.
I'm rubbish at gardening, but I'm brilliant at chopping shit down. If you just want it all cleared, I'm good at that.
And I bet that's a swim now, isn't it? I bet that's a Wrigley Fish swim now.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
But that just shows that basically you knew where they were going to be and permitted, obviously. You've gone in there, cleared that swim out, and did you do well from there? Was it?
No, I never caught fish from it.
Did you?
No.
Yeah, not a nice bit of trimming, but it didn't work.
But that's just the way it goes. You know, it wasn't the one, but then, you know, I've cleared other swims. I mean, most noticeably was the when I caught the Burfield Common. You know, I made that swim a day before and then caught that fish the next morning. So sometimes it works really well. Sometimes they don't want to be fished for there. You've exposed it, you've got your rods in, and they just go. Like I said before about big pits, they can go somewhere else. They've always got that option. They can just go away.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So yeah, it's a big gamble.
But that's all still part of the fun, though, isn't it? What you've done,
absolutely.
Creating a swim.
Oh yeah. Making that was great fun. And eventually, I got my mate round to help drag out the bigger. I mean, we were felling proper big trees. Yeah. Dragging them out. We had a big bonfire and a barbecue, and yeah, loved it.
Part of the fun.
I'd do it again, even knowing I weren't going to catch.
So we've got a few fishy pictures. I think we're done on all the sort of scenic pictures now. No, sorry, we have got some more scenic ones on there as well. This is
island fishing.
Yeah.
I fished a couple of lakes. I've been on one I'm still on one now, actually, that's island fishing. The one I'm on now is a little more cultured, prepared.
Yeah.
It's got swims and bits of astroturf and what have you, but this wasn't. This was completely wild on the islands. I love that Boy Scout stuff. Row out there, make your own little swim, or squeeze in between the trees like that. You know, do everything. Well, go out there for a few days and do like Robinson Crusoe. You know, just in your own little environment. It's great.
I've done it abroad. You know, on a few trips.
Yeah.
We're boating, look like what you've done there. And we're boating out and we're finding these spots. And on a couple of occasions, I've come back with ticks and all sorts of bites and God knows what. But the fun of it is it's just so out of. It's just not normal, like the normal boring setup in the swim, sit at them wraps and all of that.
And we'd get, you know, the rod set up, or I'd get the rod set up and get the bivvy, if I have a bivvy set up, and then have a little fire. You know, we've done all sorts out there.
Not that. Preparing your boat.
Look at, but you know, hemp preparation, all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's great. I understand why you can't do that on most carp lakes. You know, you can't.
But when you can,
it's brilliant. But yeah, I do understand why that's not allowed on a normal lake. But it was allowed on here because you're in the wilderness, and it's just great. You know, that's your evening's entertainment right there, isn't it?
Well, it fills the day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I don't care what anyone says. Sometimes you're sitting there, you have got motionless rods, or you know there's a bite at certain times.
But it's bite times. You know, I'm absolutely obsessed with bite times. If someone says, "Oh, I had 3 out of such and such a lake I'm fishing," my only question will be what time.
Yeah.
Or my first question will be what time. I don't want to punish them for what they caught it on and what rig or even where. I want to know the time, and I keep updating in my mind bite time, and I want to know when to be ready to have everything set and quiet and ready hours beforehand, and I want to know when to bring them in and go and do me looking or moving or whatever. You know, I want to know the best times so that I can do other shit in the off times.
Do you find it helps when you fish a big pits to actually have them lines out for a while?
I think it helps anywhere. Anywhere.
Just to give them freedom of movement.
Definitely. Yeah, without a doubt. If you're on a smaller, busy pit and you want to find the fish, the first place to look is the bit that's not being fished. If there's a corner that isn't being fished, no carp corner, deep, no one fishes up there, it's 30 foot deep and there's a whole village in the bottom there and it's thick silt and all the stories you hear, you go up there quietly and have a look, you think, yep, there they are.
Getting away from it.
There they are.
Yeah.
And that's because there's no lines and no pressure, so doing that to your own swim has only got to be an advantage, isn't it? The only disadvantage is you've got to put it all back in. You know, so again, if I know the bite times and say the bite times are up until 10 in the morning, then I might bait up at 10:30 or 11 o'clock ready, as long as I know I'm staying, which is not that often, but if I'm caught and I'm staying, do everything then, you know, fresh baits, clip it all up, get it ready and then leave it out and then put them back in at tea time.
Yep.
So that I haven't got to then spom it and bait it or whatever. I've done all that.
Trap set.
Yeah, everything's ready and then you just literally donk, away you go.
Okay, interesting. Have we got any more slides on? Are we done for fish now? I think, aren't we?
No, we've got a big pit.
Oh, so we've got the big pit as well there. This was...
That's another one of the ones in the valley up there. I've done a lot of fishing through that. Yeah, I keep saying Raisbury, but through that whole sort of valley, the Colne Valley it is. And the big pits, they give you big skies, you know, and you get great sunsets and that great reflection on the water, and I just love them.
That is,
you can probably tell
the passion for big pits.
I do just love
100%.
But I love carp fishing, don't get me wrong. You know, I fished the last 2 nights on K1, which is not a big pit.
36,
is it? Something like that. Yeah, it's a standard sort of pit. It's got an incredible stock of fish, unbelievable stock of fish in there. But I like that as well. You know, I was sort of on my toes, barrow, moving here, and last night I moved into a tiny little corner in a swim that was, it's not even like a proper swim. There's a swim that fishes that part of the lake, but it's also got a little annex stalking swim that you can't fish if someone's in the main swim, but there wasn't. So I sat up in there and I had to my rod straight up over, it was just thick reed. There was a little tiny jetty that just went into a reed bed, and I'm fishing one there and one there, and there was fish coming along the edge, and I love all that as well. You know, it doesn't all have to be about fishing at 150 yards in a great big pit. I love carp fishing, and I love sight fishing. The fish I fished for last night, all the big ones was up one end, and I was in the swim where they were. 24 hours in, I thought, I'm not getting a bite from them. It's around spawning time that they were in a weird mood. I went up the other end, and under this little tree I saw 2 probably 18-pounders, a mid-20 and one that might have been 30, you know, with a following wind. So by the lake standards, not very big fish at all. But 2 of them were feeding in this shallow water, and I just became obsessed with it because it's carp fishing. You know, I'm on a smaller pit. I'm deliberately targeting the smallest fish, well, the smallest, but some of the smaller fish in the lake. But it was exciting, exciting that I ended up setting up in this little tiny thing all night, just a bed chair out in the open, 2 rods and a net and my brew kit. And I had a lovely night. Didn't catch anything, but they were there, and it was so exciting. Yeah, I'd look through the bush and, they're still there. And I looked this morning, and I knew straight away because all the sediment had dropped out the water that they'd moved, and they probably moved out as I got in my sleeping bag, expecting a bite. But I didn't care. Those few hours, they were enjoyable hours, you know, and no one can take that away from you. I probably enjoyed those more than fishing the other end the night before, knowing all the big uns were there, because I was doing the standard thing in a standard swim, fishing the spots. But here I was up the other end doing my own thing, no one else up there in a little tiny corner poking through the reeds and that. So yeah, I like all forms of carp fishing. It hasn't got to be this all the time. I do, that is my passion.
But sometimes you just do a little bit of alternative fishing.
I can't walk past one. No. If I see one that's a little bit of a challenge, whatever, if I see something feeding, I cannot walk past.
And that's what really ticks you. I can see just from sitting across the table for you now, you that's what makes you tick, is it's that challenge of...
Oh, absolutely. I spent about 7 hours in the blazing sun once on Raisbury 1, years and years ago, with a floater rod, trying to tempt this fish that just... I couldn't even see what it was, just see a little bit of a back behind the weed. Tried everything. I should have given up hours before. I'd sunstroke, I'd scorched all my back, I was burnt to pieces. Eventually it moved round the weed and I climbed a tree and it was a bream. But I was just determined to get a bite off of it.
Did you catch the bream in the end? Did you catch it?
It came round and I just went, oh.
Sunburn for you. It's always a bream, isn't it?
Because I've seen small, like last night, I've seen small fish and just become on a big fish water and become obsessed with catching that one because he's had a couple of floaters and then caught it and it's 18 pounds. And I'm chuffed.
Yeah.
I think
and that's nice to hear that, you know, it's lovely.
I've outwitted you. Yep. You know, I set out to catch you. I knew what you were and I've caught you now.
And it's nice to hear that because I think a lot of the younger generation now, it's all about big fish. Want to catch
It's all about
fish.
size.
Yeah, all about size. And it's nothing to do with that. You know, like I'm trying to teach my son at the moment as well. You know, he's into his carp angling. It's not all about size, it's about how many you catch. You know, someone could be lucky and have the big one. It doesn't make them a good angler. No. If you catch like 20 fish out of that lake a season, then you're the better angler. It's not all about the big fish.
And it goes further than that as well. And this is something I never understand. If you're fishing for this, they get called the A team in a lake or a fish in a lake. Say you're fishing for humpy or whatever. Now, you catch it at, it's usually around 40, and you catch it at £38, and someone else catches it at £44. It's exactly the same. There is no difference whatsoever.
Fish is the same fish, isn't it?
You are targeting an individual creature, and you've caught it. What it weighs has got
nothing to do with it.
Doesn't make any difference at all.
You've outwitted that carp.
Yeah, but to some people, like they'll stop fishing a lake when they've spawned because they're at lower weights because they want to catch them at high. That is fishing for weight, isn't it? That's not
100%.
not fishing for a target. That's fishing for what the scales are going to tell you.
Yeah,
I don't quite get that. You know, I'm on a lake where I caught the big one last year. I went there to catch it at a personal best weight because the lake held a personal best. 55 is my biggest fish. This fish had been out at 60 last year. I thought it'd be lovely to catch a personal best fish. I caught it at 54, but I caught it.
Yeah.
And somebody actually said to me this year, I bet you'd like it. Why are you still on it? I said, because there's another 50 and this, you know, and a big, fully scaled 44 pound that I'd like to catch. And they said, I bet you'd like to get roids, it's called. Roids again now over 60. I said, no, it's the last thing in it I want to catch. I'd rather catch a 20 pound common than catch that. I've already caught that. I don't want to catch it again at a bigger weight. It will mean less than it did at the smaller weight because it's a recapture. I've taken it away from someone else. I've caught it. You know, I've proved to myself I can outwit that fish. I don't need to do it twice.
Yeah,
you know, I don't get that.
It's nice
side
to hear.
Of it.
You know, like
but I mean, and it's genuine.
Success.
You know, I mean, I caught from Raisbury back in the day, like way back. I had 2 39.15s, 2 39.12s, and a 49.15 in a season. You know, for a handful of peanuts, they'd all have been. I'd have had 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
But it don't matter. You catch Mary in February from Raisbury, at 49.15, and that's major, isn't it?
Yeah.
And someone
especially
said
that time of year as
somebody
well.
actually said to me a couple of weeks later, "Oh, I bet you were gutted." About what? It's the biggest carp in England at the time. It's February, and I've caught it. What bit am I supposed to be gutted about? An ounce.
I know, it's crazy.
It's wrong,
it really is. So I think we got some more pickies now. So we're just going to go through some of your fish pictures. So
yeah, this is.
We've only got a handful, just to look
yeah.
at. We're going to get you back in for a lot more stuff.
No problem.
Time, but let's have a little look at
this. This is a
these.
42 common from somewhere in the valley.
Somewhere in the valley, yeah.
This is a fish. Talking about recaptures, I actually caught this fish 3 times. I wasn't even trying for this fish. I was trying to catch another one in there, which I still haven't caught, and this one just kept coming along. But a lovely fish, beautiful fish,
cracking common.
Yeah, and from a big pit, and just on my own terms. So yeah, I was well happy with him the first time, not so much the third time.
And we got a few more on there as well, haven't we? So this was a recent fish for you, I think.
Yeah, this was about 3 years ago, I think, just before the goatee stage.
Oh yeah.
So I date things.
Happy smile there as well.
Yeah, I was a little bit chuffed with this one. This is a fish known as Mr. Angry. It's a mid-30. It's a fairly old fish. It's not an ancient fish. I braced this with another fish, which you haven't got a photo of, which I very rarely show, which was a couple of pound lighter, but about 30 years older. And it was one of them special ones that I didn't really show around an awful lot. A bit like Mary's Mate, remember that one?
Yeah,
that style of fish, that jet black, big, long, slightly dropped tail, old, underslung mouth, gorgeous fish. But that didn't get used a lot. Some fish are just too good to share.
Yeah, I know. You just want to keep them for yourself.
33 pounds, but yeah, that was 35. The other one was 33, but just unbelievable.
Right, okay. So we got.
That's the Burfield Common, obviously. I like that one so much. I've got it tattooed on me now.
Oh no! Well, I mean, again, I think we'll probably be doing a separate video about this with you at some point.
Like I said earlier, that making the swim the night before and made it that little bit more special. I'd seen where they were. Not this particular fish. I'm not saying that I knew where to catch or how to catch this one. I didn't. There was just some fish using an area that was very hard to get to because of sailing buoys.
Yeah.
And I'd spoken to the bailiffs at the lake and said, well, you should have a swim down there. It was on their bit of land. It wasn't like it was out of bounds or anything. There was the first swim or the last swim, it depends which way you walk, and then there was a few hundred yards, a couple of hundred, and then a sailing club, and another swim on their land would have got you behind the boys and safe fishing, and they were always on this bit. And he said to me, he said, "Oh yeah, we've got permission to do that." He said, "No one's ever got around to doing it, and I can't get the bailiffs to cut it." I said, "I'll do it." I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do the whole lot." He said, "Other people will be allowed to fish it." I said, "No problem. I'll do it." I said, "Two favours. Don't tell anyone I'm doing it, and can I do it when I want to do it?" He said, "Well, yeah, of course you could." Perfect. So just waited for the wind to blow in there. Got in there, cut the swim. Next morning, bang.
Wow. That's... I
thought I'm not cutting it out prior to that, because it will start being fished, and then when the conditions are perfect, someone else is going to be in there.
That's crazy. That's planned.
So it's half sneaky, but half not. Well, quite a lot sneaky, I suppose.
Well,
a lot of hard work to make the swim and everything, but it paid off in the end.
Yeah, and the Burfield Common.
Well, it paid off in the start, actually.
Right.
First day.
Is there any more fishy pics? Have we got some more on there as well?
Oh, this is far more recently. This is last year. This is the big one I was talking about. That I thought was going to be a personal best, but wasn't. But it is what it is. That's the fish known as Royd's, 54 pound. That's out of the Idland Lake, which is again on the complex. There is RK Leisure,
amazing
and
place,
you've got Horton Church Lake, which obviously I fished 30 years ago. That was I fished there. Jesus Christ. In fact, the anniversary of that is on June the 16th, like just coming up 30 years ago season, when the first syndicate started on Horton. So yes, they've got Horton, Raisbury, all three Raisbury lakes. They've got the boat pool, and they've got this. You've got Kingsmead 1, and this is Kingsmead Island Lake, which is I think 65 acres, and you can use boats and you can fish off the islands.
And you can leave a boat there as well, can't you?
Yeah, there's a boat pound and everything, and I do enjoy it on that. It's not a wilderness, but it's boat fishing on a big pit, and it's gravel bars and stuff. And this was my target fish, and like I say, I was lucky enough to catch that last year. So.
And there's still more in there for you?
There are fish in there I really want to catch, but what I've seen today... yesterday, off of that bridge on the K1 side, which I did fish last winter and had a very, very, very nice fish at 47 pound out of there. But what I've seen in there as well, I'm thinking, I'm a bit, I don't know which to do. So I'm going to be taking, when I go, everything in the van. I'll be taking my stuff for boat fishing and my stuff for bank fishing. I love boat fishing, don't get me wrong, but I do like bank fishing because I like to be a bit active. Yeah. I like doing a bit of stuff like I did last night. So I think I'm going to do everything.
Good on you.
All at once.
Have we got any more fishy pics now? I think we're all done on fish pictures now. Well, look, one thing we do want to talk to you very quickly about, and for anyone watching this, obviously, sorry, mate, and you've got a grandchild to go and see.
That's what I'm about.
Obviously, you've got your YouTube channel and the Patreon channel, so... I've been watching clips of that myself. Amazing. Right, so anyone watching this, you can click on. How do they find your channel? It's called the Inner Circle.
It's called the Inner Circle. Yeah. You can either put in your W dots and patreon.com and then /Dave Lane with capitals. Yep. Sounds a bit complicated. The easiest way is to just look me up on Facebook or Instagram. On the Instagram, it's in my bio. You just click it. On Facebook, it's probably just there after everything. Anything that says Patreon in it, that is a link to the site, it's not a free site. It is a pay-as-you-go site. I always say it's £5 a month, but they include VAT, so it's actually £6 a month. But that's for that you're getting at least an hour thing, like a podcasty thing every Friday, working through the books and various other things. There's competitions and there's questions and answers and what have you. But I've also got a YouTube channel, which is a free, normal YouTube channel, which if you just search me on YouTube, and I put up, quite regular blogs on there. Depends what the fishing's like this time of year, maybe 2 or 3 a month. In the winter when it's maybe 1 a month if the fishing's not so good, but there's plenty of content out there.
Well, they're great to watch because, like I say, a lot of what you've just intrigued me with, and everyone who's watching this, all your adventures are all caught on video, and you see all of what you've been showing us and telling us about there is all captured on these videos that you do. So anyone, I
do a lot of videoing, and I do. I was explaining to one of the guys here earlier that I do scrap a lot of video. I video everything, and then if nothing becomes of that session, nothing. It doesn't always need a fish, but it does help. But if I get home and think nothing really, I videoed lots of infill stuff, and so I just delete a lot, and then the next week I video again. I like it to be interesting.
It's great. I love watching them myself. Like I say, I don't get the fish bundles these days, and I think I'll get my fix through watching your videos. So, hopefully the guys will head over to your channel now, start having a little watch. And like I say, listen, you've got a grandson to go and see. And thanks for coming in. And great, again, welcome to the team, mate. A great asset to our team now. Can't wait to start working with you. Loads of new stuff with us that we can do with you on bank and coming into the studio. And Dave, thank you very much for coming in. And we'll see you soon.
Oh, you certainly will.
Take care.
All right, nice one. Cheers.